The U.S. and Chinese officials reached an agreement during a London meeting this week. President Trump cheering the deal on Truth Social this morning, outlining some of the details and hailing the relationship between the two countries as excellent. Here are the details. Our very own Fed correspondent, Jennifer Schomburger. Hey, Jennifer.
Good morning, Maddie. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent set to testify this morning here on Capitol Hill, just hours after wrapping up 2 days of trade negotiations with China. Bessent, along with Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer, were able to restore the trade pact that was struck in Geneva just last month. But there are still question marks about what is exactly contained within this framework. President Trump posted on Truth Social about an hour ago that it looks like tariffs are actually going to rise to 55% on China from 30%, while China will have a 10% tariff on the U.S. He said, "We will provide to China what was agreed to, including Chinese students using our colleges and universities, which has always been good with me." He said the relationship is, quote, excellent. Now, apparently, reportedly, the Chinese drove a bit of a hard bargain, asking whether the U.S. would lift export controls on certain U.S. technologies to China in return for lifting export controls on those rare earth minerals, that roadblock that had emerged in talks that inspired the second set of conversations. President Trump implying that that will likely go forward. Commerce Secretary Lutnick saying Tuesday evening that once the Chinese begin exporting those critical rare earth minerals, that the U.S. will lift export controls on some U.S. technologies. President Trump saying, though, that he still needs to approve this deal, and Chinese President Xi Jinping also needs to sign off on this deal. So still a lot of question marks remaining here. Now, Secretary Bessent set to testify before the House Ways and Means Committee at 10 a.m. this morning, where hopefully we will get some more details on this deal. And guys, separately, last night we learned that a U.S. appeals court ended up extending a stay that had been put in place, reversing the U.S. International Trade Court's ruling that had rendered the president's tariffs under IEEPA, that International Economic Emergency Powers Act. So those reciprocal tariffs still remain in place, although they have been paused for 90 days. A hearing has been set for July 31st. Back to you.
With more on what this means for the broader trade picture, let's bring in Greg Valliere, who is the AGF Investments Chief U.S. Policy Strategist here. Greg, just take us into your reaction. You see, of course, again, this coming across social media, and now a few officials also speaking what seems to be as sources on the record, at least here. There we've got the Truth Social post up on our screens for viewers watching at home. What was your initial reaction? Is this actually hitting the mark?
It's an improvement. It's good news, Brad. I think my main reaction was by noon today, I virtually guarantee there will be a very pointed email text from Donald Trump talking about Jerome Powell. I think that getting inflation down was a pleasant surprise for Wall Street, but it will incite Trump to resume his demands that we get a rate cut.
So just to reiterate, does this hit or miss the mark of what we were expecting coming out of these multi-day talks in London between the U.S. and China?
Yeah. Don't know. The atmospherics were good. I think that, as we all know, a big country trading with the U.S. could take months and months and months to get a deal done. They may have to extend deadlines, but this is the bottom line here is this is a positive development.
Well, it's fascinating, Greg, because, and I'm hoping you can help me with the math for a second, because the president posted about a 55% tariff rate on China, but I'm not getting that when I do the math. It's a 10% baseline, a 20% fentanyl tariff, and then 30% on China. That's more than 55%. So how did he get to that 55% number?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I only made it through algebra in high school. I never got to geometry. So I don't know. Not sure how they came up with that number.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder, too, to your point, the degree to which investors can believe these headlines as they come through. I know that you don't talk to people about how they should be investing, but people ask you questions about policy to get clarity on their investments. What would you tell them to do off the back of tariff headlines like this?
Yeah, unless they're day traders, I'd advocate caution. I think that we need to see, as you guys point out, we need to see all of the details here. But again, I'll go back to the other point, the other big story this morning. I do think this inflation number is quite positive. I think the bond market and the stock market it will at least think this is a temporary move. Maybe inflation goes back up in the fall because of tariffs, but the number this morning was a good one.
Do you think that it encourages the Fed to take any more immediate action?
No, I think that Trump would like to see it, but I think that Powell and people at the Fed still don't know if this is a temporary trend or a more lasting trend. So I think they're prepared to wait until mid to late summer before they pull the trigger.
It's interesting, too, because we have some reporting from Bloomberg about who the next Fed chair could be, and they are indicating, according to their sources, that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent might be considered as the next Fed chair. What do you think about that?
Interesting. He's highly regarded. They've got a long time to go. They've got well into 2026 before they have to make a choice. So there'll be a long time to vet this, and they could do worse.
And so as we're thinking through what would need to be and what could be playing out at that point, both on the inflation front, but then additionally on the other side of the Fed's mandate, on the employment front as well, what should we be expecting the trend to lock in at on unemployment, given what a lot of businesses are saying and signaling in that they're trying to figure out how much they should be hiring, how much they feel comfortable hiring, knowing that they're still looking for answers on the macroeconomic and tariff policy front?
That's a really good question. I think we have to wait probably until fall to see how the labor market is. You just get the sense that the economy is softening. It's not decisively softening, but it looks a little weaker. And if urban unrest spreads from LA to Chicago to Atlanta, that doesn't help. So I would say that the likelihood is growing that the next move will be by the Fed to cut rates, but I still think it's a few months away.
Greg, I want to ask you about some of the policy impact for the unemployment rate that could be driven by some of the immigration policy of this administration. We're obviously seeing this playing out in LA right now. To what degree are you concerned about further cracks in the labor market off the back of the administration's hostility towards immigrants?
Frankly, I'm surprised that people don't discuss this more. In many areas of the country, especially California, there still is an acute shortage of labor. I have a lot of friends in California. They can't find anyone to fix their roof or do all sorts of things because the labor market is tight. And considering all of the unrest we've seen this week, the labor market might even get tighter. This will dissuade people from coming illegally to the U.S. and might prompt some of them to go back to where they came from. So a really tight labor market, I think, is another big factor that I think will become more dominant over the next few months.
What are the sectors that we would have to see that in, especially thinking through the non-farm payrolls print and for the amount of positions that wouldn't even show up in that print because it is non-farm payrolls, and we know how many of those roles as well rely upon either undocumented immigrants or people who are just trying to make sure that they are going through the process but still waiting on those opportunities to solidify citizenship.
Again, I think we need more time. I know that this has been the mantra from the Fed chairman, and I think he'll still make this his mantra. I think it's next week when he testifies again. So we still have a ways to go to definitively say the labor market is starting to turn around. But to me, the labor market looks like it's softening.
Greg, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk to you about the president's latest feud with Elon Musk. We did see overnight Elon Musk expressing regrets about his commentary towards the president. All of this sort of started because of the tax bill. To what degree do you agree with Elon Musk about his concerns about the tax bill and the deficit?
Well, if you talk to deficit hawks here in Washington, they are aghast at the price tag, exacerbating the depth of the deficit. And I think Musk is one of them. His problem was that he spoke the truth in public. That's a cardinal sin in Washington. I think if he had made his criticisms private, we wouldn't have had the big fight between the two of them. So my sense is that Trump will never really make up with Musk. Maybe they'll speak to each other, but I think that's a relationship that's pretty much shattered. And it does give the Democrats a little ammunition and the Republican hawks a little ammunition over the next few weeks to make this bill more deficit reducing.
Greg, just lastly, while we have you, and I guess we'll end this kind of circularly where we began. What does the opening of U.S. and China look like? What does the follow through also need to look like on purchases, knowing that this runs counter to what some members of the administration and advisors campaigned on?
Yeah, good point also. And I think that this drags on and on and on. There's a myth that once we say we've got a framework, we've got a deal, it's great to have a framework, no complaints there, but I think it's going to be months and months, maybe Christmas, New Year's, sometime this winter before we get a text on a trade deal. That's a long way off.
Greg, always appreciate your insights. Thank you so much for adding some clarity to the continued policy confusion. Thank you.